Welcome to the Hammerdown Podcast, where we put the pedal to the metal and talk trends, tech, and tunes. My name is Jay Mervis, Director of Strategic Partnerships here at Redox. Good morning, everybody. It's 10:01, time to rock and roll. Today, my guest is Mike Schank, founder and managing director of Process Inventory Advisors and author, I'm going to have to get an autographed copy of Digital Transformation Success, Achieving Alignment and Delivering Results with the Process Inventory Framework. Mike, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jay. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. We'll give everybody a little bit of background, but Mike and I were fraternity brothers at Northern Illinois at the Pike House. Mike is probably the most famous and well-written guy out of that whole crew of characters that came out of Northern Illinois. So Mike, why don't you give us a little bit of your background and bio and how you got to this point of being, the principal and of your firm?
Yeah, for sure. So I spent most of my career in consulting. So 13 years at Accenture, and I started as a technologist. So Java, C++ programmer. I was a solution architect. I led large development programs. And then I spent 2 years at Bank of America. Through that whole time, very technology focused, knew nothing about what the business did. So my focus was delivering software code with no defects, on time, all that stuff, right? Then I joined Ernst & Young, and they didn't at that time have a strong technology practice. One of my first projects was creating a capability model for a big bank. So we interviewed some of the business stakeholders and created a model 3 levels deep that described everything that this retail bank did. And to me, it was just an epiphany moment. I was like, wow, I get to see everything this organization does in one model. I felt like it was powerful. And by the way, I had, through my career, before that and after that, I've experienced what I call the gremlins of chaos. When you're running like a large technology project or large change project, you have lack of clarity on what the strategy is, and teams don't work together, and no one knows the timeline. It's just chaos, right? So I felt like this was something that could really solve the chaos by bringing everyone together to what the business did. So from that point on, I dedicated myself to learning more about it. I created, at that point, I called myself a business architect, but I created the first business architecture practice at Ernst & Young. Then I started going to clients and working on, building transformation programs, doing requirements, doing risk management, et cetera. And through that journey, I kind of evolved from understanding business architecture, which is based on business capabilities, to really getting down to processes important. But the linkage between them is, so I developed this framework called Process Inventory Framework. And then I started to think about the book, but then I left to go to Citibank. I was head of process excellence for their US retail bank. Spent about 2 years there, left the corporate world in March of last year. And as soon as I left, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Like, I have to get this book out there. So I went on my journey. I luckily got a publisher fairly easily, and the book published in December of last year. And from that point on, I've been focused on promoting the concept through podcasts and articles, and I'm very active on LinkedIn. I have as you mentioned, Process Inventory Advisors, a consulting company, and I want to help organizations adopt this framework. And I'm also going to be building training for that as well.
Wow. So that's an impressive list of things that are lacking in the market. There's a lot of things that get done, or people buy shiny toys, or somebody says, I think I know what this is. And something gets executed and everybody says, well, why do we do this? So that's amazing that you've distilled this down into a repeatable process. And then next time I see you when I'm in Raleigh, I'm going to ask for an autograph on my copy because I'm going to order one today. But
Absolutely.
It's middle-class fancy, but hey, it's great to have you on. One of the things that, since we're in the data world, I said, hey, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk digital twins as the industry trend, Mike.
Sure.
Like a 201 level. What is digital twins in your perspective?
So a digital twin is a virtual replica of your real world environment. It is big in manufacturing because the real world is physically tangible. You create a model of your office space or a combine or some kind of physical asset, and then you use this digital model to receive data signals from that, whether it's IoT data, RFID, whatever. You receive data signals, and then you use an AI-backed digital twin engine to do analytics on anything that you want. It could improve decision making and help you eliminate inefficiencies and waste in resources. It could help really with any kind of operation metrics that exist. Now, one of the things I think that the industry is struggling with is, what if it's not a physically tangible environment like manufacturing? What if it's like a bank or healthcare company or something like that, where all the work happens in a back office or just different office spaces? So let me take a slight detour and just explain what process inventory is, because I think it's key to the story. So process inventory is it's two things. It's modeling your organization, it's doing data integration. So for the modeling of the organization, process inventory is all about capturing every single process that your organization performs. And the way you do that is you do an interview process, but you start at the top of the hierarchy, because the organizational hierarchy is a complete representation. You start at that hierarchy and you just ask a simple question: what is it that you do? And then you ask their teams what they do, and you ask their teams what they do, et cetera, until you get a full representation of processes. And then you go back up the chain and you ask people for formal attestations, so that everyone agrees that, yes, this is what we do, it's accurate and complete, and then you have ownership along the chain. So now that process becomes more than just, and I had somewhat of a viral post I put on LinkedIn about this, is conventional thinking on process management, I think, is extremely limited, in that people think of process management as, we need to look at processes to optimize it and to streamline it and standardize it and all those good things. And that's all important. I think it's great. What process becomes in this new thing is, it becomes a language to connect different perspectives. It becomes the framework for pulling in organizational knowledge and data. It becomes the way to break down silos. It becomes the way to drive transformation, whether adopting new digital technologies or driving efficiencies. It becomes that unifying force. So I mentioned that's the modeling part of it. But then there's data integration. All our organizations have a lot of repositories that cover how our organizations work, whether it's a data repository or risk repository, HR systems for people and teams, or vendor catalogs. We have all this data that's untapped. Now, if you could take that data and co-locate it with this process inventory taxonomy, now you could start building associations between what processes use which technology. And it starts to become a single repository for all operating intelligence for the organization. So now back to digital twin. So for a non-physically tangible environment like a bank and healthcare or whatnot, this becomes your digital twin, because you've mapped out how everything works, how the ownership is established, all the resources in there. Now, if you could take that and use the process names and start propagating that to sources of operational data inputs, like your defect system, your customer complaint system, your transactional processing system. Now you could get data signals that have consistent data label names. And now you run that through your AI powered digital twin engine. Now you could literally solve any operational issue that you have. It's better risk management. You could identify issues before they impact customers. You could really drive out inefficiency, whether it's cost or headcount or whatever you need to do. It really drives and defines everything for how your organization works. And I think it'll revolutionize how organizations operate.
No, that's awesome, Mike. And that's one of the challenges, is feeding the data. That's what we solve in the healthcare business, and getting into that standardized common format. But when we're going through this process, because everybody, like you said, one of the things we hear is, we don't want to create new problems that we need to solve for, right? So, everybody has a universal challenge with resource constraints or supply chain or cyber risk, and being proactive on that stuff.
Yep.
Being able to build out that digital twin model, like you're talking, gives you, number one, an identification of all of the interdependencies. And two, if we go and move this stuff, does it make it more efficient, or do we use this thing and repeat it for a different process, which is, what people struggle with.
Oh, for sure. I think one of the powers of it is doing simulations. So now you could do what ifs, like what if I expand to this region, or what if I change my technology platforms to this? You could start to do those what if analysis and have the AI powered engines do the simulations of what that's going to mean for revenue or any other performance metrics, so that you could start to analyze things before you actually invest in those programs.
Right. And customer feedback is key no matter what business you're in. If you can get that feedback loop tighter and faster and from different domains within the business, whether it's patient satisfaction, whether it's at the branch, at the bank, whether it's on, the trading algorithms that people are using, that's what makes it impressive to be able to build that digital twin and say, let's move faster.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Mike, let's transition over to tech, because this is probably a bigger conversation than what's the actual trend and why does somebody go to, digital twin format to go and update their business. But what technology or services, you talk about the modeling engine, what does that look like? What's used?
So you need a modeling platform. So there's a lot of platforms out there today. Software AG Eras, GB Tech, BIC, we got iGraphics. There's a whole bunch of technology that exists today, which is a good thing. This is a capability that exists. So two things have to happen within these platforms. You have to be able to model, and that means creating taxonomies, really multiple taxonomies that represent different things. Creating your process models if you want to go to that level, and then doing all the data associations. So building that kind of operational intelligence or digital twin of the organization really is a modeling exercise. The second part of it is getting those process name data labels out to the sources of operational data, so those signals are consistent. So that's going to take some data work across different platforms, and you can start small and scale, but ultimately, what this is a vision for how you get everything anchored to a common language. And then third is obviously the digital twin AI powered engine. So as it receives the signals, it could do analysis for whatever question or business problem you're trying to tackle.
So since that is so powerful, if you invest the time, effort, energy to do that, to move the business forward, what does good look like, Mike, when you're in this kind of engagement, when this is successful with that data?
So everything is clear, everything is transparent, ownership is well understood, and I think and I've seen this in my consulting days. I did this in a lot of customers. It really takes and I mentioned the gremlins of chaos and all the complexity and the confusion that frankly is the root cause of transformation failures, and it's the antidote. It makes everything clear, it makes everything transparent. Ownership is there, and it really just fundamentally transforms how an organization operates. It does take, and I'll say this, it does take a process capability. So it does take an investment of time, some money, and leadership commitment. But you need a process capability or process center of excellence team that will do that modeling and that will do governance, because inventorying every process in the organization is great, but organizations change and they change all the time. So you need governance routines to go out and get reattestations to make sure it's complete. But also you want to weave this into how an organization operates, how you define your strategy so you understand impacts, how you drive your operational excellence programs, how you deliver change, so creating requirements and testing and scoping projects through this common language. Risk management, I think, is another big one, is orienting how organizations identify risk, whether it's compliance, operational risk, vendor risk management, resiliency, whatever. But you do this all through that common language. So if you get the organization operating through this common language holistically, then updating this information becomes easy because everyone's a stakeholder in it.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, Mike, because the governance, creating that framework on how things should be in the universal format, you talk about people moving in and out, changing jobs, new people, this and that. Everybody having the same common language is key, but it also is for data protection, for cybersecurity, third-party risk. All those things are in everybody's 10K, employee retention, supply chain.
Yeah.
We've seen supply chain be a mess. First of all, we didn't have enough product and, toilet paper to cars. And now, everybody's got plenty of toilet paper, but now we don't have, the car inventory is getting glutted right now. So it's wild that this is a key component to being able to manage through that whole process chain.
Oh, for sure. And I was at a conference recently, and one of the keynote speakers I thought delivered a brilliant point. He said, the key to transformation success is you have to do the hard work to understand the details of how your organization works. And I think that's spot on. That you've probably heard the term, all our organizations have dead bodies, and you have to know where they're buried, and you have to know the inefficiencies. Like there is no other way than to roll up your sleeves and get into it. But that's going to be the key to success, because you're going to need to know where those obstacles are so that you can navigate, deliver your transformation on time and on budget to what the business is expecting.
Yeah, and you talk about unburying bodies. Many organizations are going through some level of maturity right now, and data and cyber, they're mutually exclusive but totally interconnected. And
Yeah.
some of the issue is that they don't know where their data is to be able to go do these like if you don't wrangle all the data and understand where to put that in, and make sure it's clean, not duplicative, and all of those things that are important to be able to drive exactly what you're saying is how do we automate process or update things, or we have resource constraints here. How do we take that model to the rest of the business or somebody that we acquire, M&A, joint ventures and divestitures. A lot of the consulting world and data sees challenges with that.
And this is a huge enabler for that, because if you think about it, when it comes to data management, there's data at rest and data in motion, right? Data in motion will, for the large part, go through your business processes. So if you have an inventory of your business processes, as you go from one activity to the next, data is being handed off. And if you could track that and understand exactly what data elements are, and then tie that back to your enterprise data catalog, and then you could tie that to where the source of the data is. Now you understand where there's like data in different repositories, and now you could start to clean up your data and move down the path of a master data management program, or fix your transactional data, or whatever it may be. But it helps you, that clarity and transparency helps you design a cleaner data environment.
Yeah, and that's the key, because bad data gives you bad results or inaccurate results. So this
Yeah.
the digital twin is one of the key advancements for your business. But all these one-on-one level blocking and tackling to get to a point of maturity. And going back to your whole DNA, Mike, is how do we get through this journey of having a standardized format? So when we do acquire somebody or divest somebody, everybody wants to know like where those bodies are buried and not have to bring in a shovel. And when you have
Exactly.
it all documented, that's key.
Yeah, and there's another leader in the AI space, Michael Ning, NG, but he's starting this movement called data-centric AI. And his whole point is if you think about AI, it's software code to do the analytics and all the mapping and whatnot, but it's also data. And we're getting to a point where diminishing returns on the software, because it's getting fairly mature. So the next focus has to be on getting clean data into the engine so that you're getting accurate analysis on the back end.
Right. And the standardized repeatable process makes it so that anytime there's a change in, my background's healthcare, 97% of the data has not been leveraged. So how much historical, if we're only using the immediately actionable, there's not enough context, because we all know the more data you have and the more you have it clean and actionable, that's going to make a better result on what we're doing for predictive analytics, or how we, do anything with genomics, sequencing, the crazy things that you need a ton of compute power, but if you don't have the right data, it's going to be miserable.
Exactly. And I'm speaking to the choir on this, but there's been a proliferation of data, and that's only going to continue to accelerate with more devices, more, IoT or whatnot. Like we're just consumed in data. We need the ability to manage it in a structured way and tap into it for the value that it could give us.
Right. And find those exact things, because the IoT data that you're talking about now in the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, that's just exploded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so gaining insights from all that data that's coming in, instead of just storing it and making that, like this boat anchor cost, that helps make the business better, do something to monetize it. And those are things that people want. Everybody wants to go make more money, right?
Yeah, for sure. And ultimately it's going to be a competitive advantage. Who's going to excel in tapping into that to drive better operational performance, better service for your customers, and maybe even better products. And the ones that don't will will struggle.
Yes, because it is a digital world now. There's no more forms in triplicate. Whether you're doing cement, which is, a very manual thing that's, product from point A to point B. Those guys used to use dot matrix printers. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's all getting digitized too on how, they're managing their business digitally as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, I think my framework, just to summarize, I think is a real big enabler for not only digital twins, cleaning up the data environment, but really transforming our organizations.
right. And the last thing I'll say on that, Mike, is we've had many feedbacks from CIOs and CTOs where they say, all right, we can do all this, but don't create another problem for me to solve with technology. Let's figure out what the use cases are and have, like all you're talking about, the entire stakeholders from the CEO down to the receiving doc and everybody in between to give input on what needs to be done, on what the initiatives of the organization are. Love it. Love it. So
Absolutely.
we're going to transition over to tunes. My favorite part of the show. It's like corporate Christmas. Like I said, Mike and I went to school together. We were, at 900 Greenbrier over there at the Pike House at Northern Illinois, home of the Huskies. Mike's probably the most famous guy, but Mike, you picked the band Smashing Pumpkins today because we're both originally from Chicago
Yeah.
band. But Mike, why did you pick Smashing Pumpkins?
So I believe certain music brings you back to certain eras in your life. And when I think of Siamese Dream and some of the tunes on that album, it brings me back to the Pike House, Grant North dorms, you and the whole Pike Brotherhood. But yeah, it's when you suggested and you told me the format of this, like it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, and I love pumpkins too. Like you're saying, there's a lot of positive connective tissue to like a happy time where
Yeah.
we're so busy, and we weren't really busy. But you know how this works. We go fantasy football style. We try to connect in a couple songs from Pumpkins. I'll give you the first one, Mike. How does this connect? What's your first song that connects back into Digital Twins?
Oh, that's a good question. God, I could think of Disarm You or Disarm.
I got
Um,
that on my list.
yeah, so it's about disarming you with a smile, and I don't know. This might be a stretch, but Digital Twins is going to make everyone happy. So let's disarm everyone with a smile.
Yeah, and that's kind of the consulting world, right? The consultants show up and everybody gets on edge. So if you could disarm them, that's good. I had it on my list, so we're on the same page. I'll go fantasy football style. I'll take two. I think that Perfect is one of their songs that once we get through some Digital Twins, it gets us closer to Perfect. But that
Yeah.
song encapsulates for me. And then Rocket, because we're talking about getting somewhere much faster, and that song has just it's great end to end. So I'll give you the last one, Mike. On the
I'll say
Pumpkins.
today because there's no moment like now, and I think today is when the future starts, and I think Digital Twins and we're in the digital revolution, but it's only going to accelerate. And today is where we start to think about how do we position our organizations to be where it needs to be to ride this digital wave.
Awesome. Well, listen, Mike, thanks for being on. I'm going to hold you to next time I see you in Raleigh or you're down in Charlotte, autographing my copy of the book.
I'd be
And
disappointed if you didn't call me.
of course, I'm going to call you. I mean, I always have an excuse, but listen, share it, like it, tell your friends, tell your mom. Thanks for tuning in. Put the hammer down.